Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spake Zarathustra depicts a prophet descending from his mountain to dismantle the foundations of human belief. After a decade of total isolation, Zarathustra steps out of his mountain cave. He has gathered so much wisdom that he feels compelled to pour it out to the rest of the world. On his way down the mountain, he encounters an elderly hermit living in the forest, a man who spends his days singing and mumbling praises to the divine. Zarathustra watches him go and wonders how a man could live so long in the forest without hearing the news: God is dead. This diagram shows the traditional structure of human morality. When the central pillar of divine authority collapses, it leaves behind a massive void. The absolute truths that guided society for centuries simply evaporate. Without that framework, humanity stares into an abyss of meaninglessness. Our species faces a stark choice. We either consciously invent a new path forward, or we decay into a state of total, comfortable apathy. Zarathustra arrives at the nearest town, a place called the Pied Cow. He stands in the marketplace and offers the crowd a new goal to fill their spiritual void: the Superman. The Superman represents a future version of humanity that has conquered its own flaws and created its own values. He warns the crowd that if they reject this struggle, they will devolve into the last man, a herd-minded creature who only seeks warmth and refuses to take risks. The crowd laughs at him. They ignore his philosophical warning, assuming he is just a warm-up act for the literal tightrope walker they came to watch. Mid-performance, another performer jumps over the rope dancer. The man loses his footing, drops his pole, and plummets directly into the marketplace. The townspeople scatter in terror, but Zarathustra stays. He comforts the shattered, dying performer, then carries the corpse out into the dark wilderness to respectfully bury him inside a hollow tree. The prophet leaves the dead man in the tree, resolving to bypass the crowds and search for individuals capable of understanding him. Leaving the marketplace behind, Zarathustra gathers a select group of disciples, choosing to teach his philosophy directly to a dedicated few. This diagram outlines the spirit's evolution. First, the camel accepts heavy burdens and rigid societal roles. It then transforms into the lion, aggressively rejecting old duties to fight for freedom. Finally, the spirit becomes the child, possessing a clean slate to invent entirely new values. As he teaches, Zarathustra notices a dangerous pattern. His disciples are treating his words as absolute dogma, turning him into the exact kind of infallible idol he wants them to destroy. He decides to leave them. A true teacher of freedom must eventually be surpassed by his students, and Zarathustra refuses to be worshipped. Zarathustra wanders alone for years across seas and rocky terrains. Without his disciples, he is forced to confront the darkest, most difficult concepts of his own philosophy. His greatest psychological enemy takes the form of the spirit of gravity. It manifests as a heavy, mocking dwarf sitting on his shoulder, constantly pulling him toward despair and paralyzing his progress. This diagram illustrates Zarathustra's abysmal thought. Time is not a straight line progressing forward, but a closed loop where everything repeats forever. This means every failure, pain, and the petty last man will return eternally. There is no escape from mediocrity. Driven to the edge of madness, he experiences a hallucinatory vision. He sees a young shepherd choking on a heavy black snake. Instead of pulling it out, the shepherd bites the snake's head off and spits it away, symbolizing the aggressive, decisive action required to overcome existential dread. By accepting the reality of this infinite repetition and choosing to love it anyway, Zarathustra conquers his disgust. He emerges from the ordeal as a convalescent, a recovering spirit prepared for his ultimate test. Over the years, Zarathustra's hair turns white. One afternoon, sitting outside his cave, he hears a long cry of distress echoing up from the abysses of his mountain domain. He tracks the sound across the rocky landscape. As he investigates, he discovers a bizarre cast of characters wandering through his territory. These are the higher men. He encounters 2 displaced kings, an old magician, a voluntary beggar, the unemployed last pope, and even his own wandering shadow. Among them is a figure known as the ugliest man. This specific individual holds a terrible significance. He is the one who could not endure the gaze of a divine witness, and so he murdered God. Zarathustra slowly recognizes these broken, displaced figures. They are the best remnants of the old collapsed world, fully aware of their own misery and desperate for a new direction. Seeking to protect them, Zarathustra invites all these wandering figures up to his mountain cave to share a final communal supper. But when he steps out for a moment and returns, he finds them engaged in a bizarre ritual. The group is kneeling on the floor, burning incense and chanting a pious litany to a gray donkey. Zarathustra laughs at the absurdity. These men are finally shedding their rigid seriousness, finding a way to mock their own religious instincts. They are taking the first clumsy steps toward creating their own values, even if those values begin in the ridiculous. As midnight strikes, the ugliest man stands up and declares his absolute contentment. For the sake of this one joyous day, the most wretched man alive decides that life was worth it, and he is willing to live it all over again. The next morning, Zarathustra leaves the sleeping men behind and steps out of his cave, energized by the bright daylight. Suddenly, a powerful, laughing golden lion rests its head on his knee, surrounded by a swirling flock of loving doves. Inside the cave, the higher men wake up and step out to greet him, but when they hear the lion roar, they panic. They instantly flee back into the shadows and vanish. Watching them run, Zarathustra recognizes his own last sin, his lingering pity for these broken men. His deep compassion was the final anchor holding him back. He casts that pity aside. Having transcended the old values and survived his own abysmal thoughts, Zarathustra leaves the mountain, glowing like the morning sun, ready to joyfully embrace his own destiny.